You're watching Moontower Soccer's Story of the Week, where Landon Cottam and Jeremiah Bentley discuss this week's most important, consequential, and interesting Austin FC news. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined by maybe one of the only people who was glad to see a weather delay the other night. It's Mike Crignola.
Hey, yeah. If it weren't for the weather delay, we would have showed up after the match was over. And so I'm pretty glad about it, Landon. I will take responsibility for the first goal in this New York City match because we weren't in our seats yet. But we had a long travel day. We were coming back from the beach in the Outer Banks. And the plan was we leave the Outer Banks at 7 a.m. We fly from Norfolk, Virginia. Oh, that was the most Massachusetts I've ever been. We fly from Norfolk, Virginia. Wow. To Baltimore, and then from Baltimore to Austin. And we land in Austin at 4:30. Everything is going great. We leave Baltimore. We are 20 minutes outside of Austin when we do a loop. And the pilot's like, they're not ready for us down there yet. So then we are looping for about a half hour. And then the pilot says, okay, change of plans. And the flight attendant comes on and is like, yeah, so we're going to be landing in San Antonio in about 45 minutes. And everyone on the plane was like,
Then what?
yeah, right. No one knew. No one knew then what at the time on the airplane. Turns out the pilot had hit their hours threshold, so they're not allowed to fly anymore. So they needed to find new pilots. But you can't just create a pilot.
Is there a pilot on board?
Right, yeah. And so we land in San Antonio and they're like, yeah, we don't know when we're going to take off again for Austin. So everybody can get off the plane. Obviously, at this point, I'm freaking out because we have a match to get to. Landon, we left the beach a day early to be home for the game. And so we decide to rent a car and we're going to drive from San Antonio to Austin. We get to the car rental desk. Everything is booked at every carrier. And so Steph is a genius and decided to get us a lift from the San Antonio airport to Q2.
Is that what you did?
Yes.
Wow.
And so we got dropped off. We go straight into the match. And as we are walking in, she goes, I think they just scored. We got to our seats. Team started playing better. I told everyone it was going to be a 2-1 win from the jump. Landon, I'm not saying it's my fault that they scored, but I am taking the blame.
Well, I'll give you credit for being an oracle and predicting the score, and I'll also blame you for the goal instead of Austin's defense falling asleep. All right, well, let's jump into the story of the week, which I think we have to start with the result. Austin comes back after giving up an early goal. That was Mike's fault.
Yep.
To beat NYCFC 2-1. I wanted to start the show off. I wanted to circle back to a couple of points that Jeremiah and I made last week, and one of them being a lot being said by fans and players and coaches about the collective effort given in Kansas City last weekend. Austin were pretty majorly outclassed in the opening minutes of the NYCFC match, which leads to this goal, but they kept grinding it out long enough to get back into this game. And then I think had some luck along the way with NYCFC not finishing chances, and then Austin finishing some chances whenever they got them. But I think we saw that fight back, and after coming out a little slow, being dominated by NYCFC, I mean, they looked really great on the ball, just zipping the ball around the field, playing the way that what we want to do, what we're supposed to be doing. They're trying to do it and have players who can actually pull it off and just zipping the ball around the field constantly.
And a lot of that was the off the ball movement, right? NYC, every time a player didn't have the ball, but their team was in possession, they were moving and they were finding spaces and they were exploiting the shapes that we were giving them. And that's something that I think we don't see a lot of normally when Austin's in possession, right? We see a lot of like players throwing their hands in the air, being like, do something.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw a little bit of it from Austin at periods during this game, but NYCFC was doing it pretty much the whole game and doing it
Yeah.
really well. But like as I was saying, Austin put in the effort, put in enough fight to stay in it and get those two chances and then grind out the last few minutes and get out with the win. And so it was really good to see that back from them. Another thing we talked about last week was Owen Wolf. Jeremiah went all caps on Owen Wolf haters. And then
he was so good.
and then this week, Owen Wolf went all caps on Owen Wolf haters. He got a really nice assist for the match winner, 100% pass completion. He moved to the midfield, started on the right wing, and then moved to the midfield around the 70th minute. I think he was probably Austin's best player from that point on. And maybe even before that, you could consider him one of the better players on the field, but just really dominant in certain moments. And we'll get into those when we talk about the goals. But he was playing really boldly, playing with a lot of confidence, and like providing the kind of ball progression that just does not exist in this team whenever Danny Pereira is not on the field.
Yeah.
And I hope that is something that he can build on for the rest of the season, because whenever you see him in those little moments, you're like, oh, this kid is special. But I feel like either the game circumstances or his confidence or whatever doesn't allow him to fully achieve that all the time. And also youth, right? He's young, he's still learning, but whenever he turns it on and is clicking like that, man, he's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I think it's tough too with our midfield build to figure out where to slot him in when like the rest of the roster clearly has this gigantic hole on the wing. And so when you put a kid in a position that he's not as comfortable with as others, maybe it's harder. I don't know. Like I don't know. We'll talk more about kind of the actual match itself, but I thought Owen was outstanding. If it hadn't been for Jossie's brace, Owen's my man of the match for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could still argue for it, brace aside. Any other thoughts on these points, or should we take a break and move on to the rest of the game?
I just want every week for there to be a Moontower pats itself on the back segment. And I'm really glad that you're leveraging the story of the week feature to do that this week, Landon.
What else? What is it there for, Mike? All right, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more of the match. If you like this video, you can listen to the full episode at moontowersoccer.com or wherever you get your podcasts.